All right, let's talk about something we've all been through, that feeling of losing an argument even when you just know you're right. Well, today we're going to crack open the user's manual for your brain with a guide to logical arguments.
You totally know what I'm talking about, right? You're in the middle of a discussion, maybe even a heated debate, and the other person says something that, well, it just feels off. You can't quite put your finger on why, but you know their reasoning has a hole in it somewhere. It's so frustrating.
Well, it turns out that making a great point isn't about having the loudest voice in the room. Nope, it's all about being logical. And today, we're going to give you the keys to understand and even build arguments that are practically bulletproof.
Okay, so first things first. We need to redefine a word we all think we know: argument. See, in logic, an argument isn't about two people yelling at each other. It's something way more structured. And honestly, way more powerful.
Think of a logical argument kind of like building a case in a courtroom. You have your premises, which are just your pieces of evidence or your reasons, and you use those premises to lead everyone to an inescapable conclusion. It's all about creating a clear path of reasoning from A to B to C.
So what are these building blocks? Well, it's pretty simple. You start with your proposition. That's the main idea you're trying to prove. Then you lay out your premises, the facts and reasons that back it up. And finally, if you've done your job right, those premises lead everyone straight to your conclusion.
Now, this is where things get really interesting. It turns out there isn't just one single road to a logical conclusion. There are actually a few different paths your brain can take, and each one is trying to accomplish something a little different. So, the three big ones are deductive, inductive, and abductive reasoning. Think of it like this. Deductive logic is shooting for absolute certainty. Inductive logic is all about figuring out what's most probable. And abductive logic, that's your inner detective, trying to find the best explanation for the clues you have.
Let's start with the real powerhouse, deductive logic. This is the stuff of guarantees. If your premises are true, your conclusion is absolutely 100% locked in. It's like the famous example. If it's true that all men are mortal, and it's true that Socrates is a man, well, then it's undeniable that Socrates is mortal. Case closed.
Inductive logic, on the other hand, is built on observation and patterns. So you see a swan, and it's white. You see another, it's white. After seeing hundreds of white swans, you might conclude, therefore, all swans are white. It's a really strong guess, but it's not a guarantee. All it takes is for one black swan to show up, and poof, your conclusion is toast.
And then we have abductive logic, which, honestly, you're using all day, every day. Imagine you wake up and the grass is wet. What happened? Well, the sprinklers could have come on. Maybe there was a lot of dew, but the most likely explanation is that it rained. That's abductive reasoning. It's an educated guess to the best explanation.
Okay, so for the rest of our time here, we're really going to zoom in on those deductive arguments. Why? Because that's where you learn how to build totally airtight cases, and more importantly, how to spot flawed logic from a mile away.
So, whenever you hear a deductive argument, the very first test it has to pass, it's not is it true? The first question you have to ask is it valid?
Now, this is a really, really important point. Validity has nothing to do with whether the statements are actually true in the real world. It's all about the structure. It's a test. If the premises were true, would the conclusion absolutely have to be true? It's about the logical chain, not the facts themselves.
And that brings us to the core concept for today, the one that trips a lot of people up, the critical difference between a valid argument and a sound one. This is where it all clicks into place.
All right, check this out. Premise 1, every dog is a reptile. That's obviously false. Premise 2, every reptile is cold-blooded. That's true. Conclusion, therefore, every dog is cold-blooded. Also false. And yet, believe it or not, this is a perfectly valid argument. Why? Because the structure is perfect. If dogs were reptiles, and if all reptiles were cold-blooded, it would logically have to follow that dogs are cold-blooded. The logic works, even if the information is totally wrong.
I can almost hear you thinking, wait a second. How on earth can an argument filled with nonsense be called valid? And that's exactly the right question to be asking, because the answer is the whole point.
Here it is. Validity is only step one. For an argument to be truly great, the kind that's actually persuasive and true, it also has to be sound. And a sound argument is super simple. It's one that is, first, valid, and second, has premises that are all actually true. That's the gold standard. Our crazy dog argument? It was valid, but it was unsound because premise one was false. This slide just nails the point.
Look, both of these arguments have the exact same logical structure, the same valid form. But argument 1 is sound because the starting points, the premises, are true. Argument 2 is unsound because its premises are just bonkers. The blueprint for both is perfect, but only the one built with good materials is actually sound.
Okay, now let's look at the flip side, an invalid form. With the basketball example, the flaw is obvious, right? It's just silly. But look at that second example. Every single statement in it is true, but the argument is still invalid. The conclusion doesn't actually follow from the premises. It just so happens to be true by coincidence. This is a super important catch. True statements don't automatically make a logical argument.
All right, so we've been through a lot of theory. How do you actually use this stuff in the real world? Well, I'm going to give you a super simple 2-step toolkit you can use to analyze pretty much any deductive argument you come across.
Here it is. Step 1. Forget the facts for a second and just check the form. Is it valid? Does the conclusion actually follow from the premises? If the answer is no, you're done. It's a bad argument. If the answer is yes, you move to step 2. Is it sound? Now you check the facts. Are all those premises actually true? If yes, you've got yourself a solid, sound argument. If not, it's unsound. Simple as that.
And that, right there, is the whole point. When we want to convince someone, when we want to get to the truth, our goal isn't just to make a valid argument. We have to aim higher. We need to build arguments that are also sound. That's the winning combination, a perfect logical structure built on a foundation of solid facts.
So I'll leave you with one final question to chew on. Let's say you successfully show that someone's argument is flawed. It's either invalid or unsound. Does that automatically mean their conclusion is false? Or is it possible to have the right conclusion, but for all the wrong reasons? Something to think about. Thanks for tuning in.